If you've tried your best to be a good person and ended up just tired, frustrated, exhausted, lonely, and no sense of self, this video is for you. I've been coaching people pleasers to become more confident and authentic since about 2013. And in this video, we're going to break down why the system doesn't work and what you should do instead. This is the first in a 5-part series on nice guy syndrome, how to break free of it so that you're more confident, you have better relationships, and you get a really clear sense of who you actually are. It's going to be focused on practical guidance that you can actually use in real life to get immediate results. Before you go any further, make sure you get your free access to the Nice Guy Recovery course, the in-depth one that's in my Brojo community. You'll see the link in the description or the comments below. Here's what we're going to cover in this series. Why trying to please people doesn't work. Validation seeking, how your attachment style sabotages your confidence. How to be a more confident man. The roadmap to becoming that more confident man. And why building confidence by yourself is so difficult. Let's start assuming that you're beginning this journey without really knowing everything on defining what nice guy syndrome really is. Essentially, it's a cluster of traits built around people pleasing and trying to get approval from others to the point where it's become a personality. You do this all the time or very often in certain circumstances. You generally see yourself as a good person, as a nice guy, and you feel like it's your job to make sure everybody else feels good and comfortable, and you're very averse to anything that might upset that. You are plagued by the desire to get validation and to seek approval from others. That is, you want confirmation from other people that you're a good person, and you want other people to like you. You're willing to sacrifice your own integrity in order to get these outcomes. You generally are conflict avoidant and you fear rejection. You're constantly looking to avoid things like disgust, anger, awkwardness, dislike, disagreement, all the disses. You do everything in your power to make sure everyone's having a good time around you, or at the very least that they're not being upset by you. And because you're worried that if you go for what you want, you're going to get rejected, you go for what you want in a covert way. You ask things indirectly, you sulk to get your way, you hint at what you want, you do good things for people in the hope that they'll reciprocate rather than just asking them to do things. You can't really go for things directly. How does this syndrome develop? Well, like all things, it starts in childhood. There's lots of different types of childhoods that can lead to nice guy syndrome, but generally it's about a childhood experience where you had to earn love and approval. It wasn't given unconditionally, or you were in such a chaotic emotional environment as a kid that you felt it was your job to kind of smooth everything out and make everything pleasant, or at least try to stop things from being so chaotic. So you learned that you have to do things to get love that's not given freely, and that conflict must be prevented and avoided as much as possible. From this, you develop certain attachment styles or patterns with people around love and friendship. The most common combination I see is that of both avoidant and anxious, and that is you're afraid of intimacy, you don't want people to get too close and get to know you too personally. That's why you don't share emotions, that's why you're not honest all the time. And at the same time, you don't want to be alone and you don't want to be abandoned, so you're needy as well. And you generally fluctuate between these two depending on how close somebody is getting or how far away they're getting. Again, this comes from childhood. If we had a parent who was smothering us, then we find intimacy very suffocating. And then if we had a parent, usually the father, who was emotionally distant, we felt the need to try and get their attention and make them love us. Like we had to put this effort in to make it happen. We also got a combination of reward for compliance and being impressive and punishment for non-compliance or upsetting people. So like a dog, we were trained to try and seek approval because that's where we got rewarded, like doing well in school, being polite, making everybody laugh, and then also to avoid punishment. Okay, so if anything we did made somebody offended or disgusted or made them cry or made them angry, we automatically assumed that what we did was wrong objectively and that we had caused that harm. It doesn't occur to a child that maybe the other person has the problem. And all of this is going alongside the bad data in our mind where our imagination is making up a lot of things that aren't actually happening. We imagine getting rejected thousands of times. We imagine confrontations going so badly that we get hurt. We imagined everyone abandoning us because they find out some vulnerable weakness about us. And the mind isn't very good at establishing a difference between imagined data and real data. It just lumps them all together. So our inner reality is quite warped. It's made up mostly of imagined terrible social scenarios happening, Whereas if we had actually followed through and tested it in real life, it wouldn't have gone anywhere near as badly. And in fact, a lot of good things could have happened. But we missed out on those things because our mind told us that there was a high risk. It only takes a little bit of bullying or one narcissistic parent for a kid to think that everything is dangerous and that this represents how all people are. Let's talk a little bit about the costs of being a people-pleasing nice guy. Chronic anxiety and what we might call social hypervigilance. So this is where you are really worried all the time at some level, even if you're not really sure why. Sometimes it's very specific. You're worried that that girl will reject you if you look at her. Other times it's more a vague sense of unease whenever we're around other people. And this hypervigilance is where we're constantly watching for the signs that we're getting from other people. We're very worried about how they feel about us and about our reputation, so we feel the need to constantly measure that and be very concerned about what people are thinking and feeling, especially in relation to us, but even in relation to each other. We don't even like conflict with other people happening, so we're anxious about that even when we're not involved. Resentment and a sense of unfairness begins to build, and by the time you're an adult, it's become this great weight on your shoulders where you really feel like you've been hard done by in terms of the hand you've been dealt by the universe. Feels like you've been doing everything right and getting none of the rewards while all the bad people are getting rewarded unreasonably. You feel like you're the one putting in most of the effort and it's not being reciprocated. You feel like you've paid your dues and you're not getting your return on investment. This can lead you to destroy relationships, friendships, to have what's called a puke, where you suddenly explode with rage for no reason over something minor. Because in the background, you're constantly building up the story about how unfair life is and how you're the poor victim. Loneliness. Because we keep everything at a kind of a distance, superficial, we don't allow people to get too close and intimate. We use things like humor and good grades and playing it safe emotionally and being platonic to avoid any kind of things like rejection or conflict. We end up being quite isolated. Some nice guys look like they have a lot of friends. They might even look like they're married to a partner and have kids. But inside, they feel like a unit of one. They feel like an alien hiding amongst the humans, pretending to be one of them. And this feeling increases over time the more you apply this methodology. Sexual performance issues, whether it's something like erectile dysfunction, or on the other end of the spectrum, an obsession with sex, where that's the most important thing and it's all you think about, and sometimes both, where sex becomes this huge deal in your life that kind of measures how well you're doing as a man, and it's all that really matters to you. And yet there's a kind of sickening unease about it, like there's something unhealthy going on here. And of course, very weak boundaries and a lack of respect, both from yourself and from others, meaning you're more attractive to abusive people, you repel confident people, and you generally don't get your way because you allow yourself to be walked on, which makes you resent both yourself and others. The biggest problem I've really seen in my work is that nice guys don't realize that they have this problem. They think of themselves as the good guy in the story. They're loyal, they're kind, they're compassionate, they're funny, they're helpful. They think, I'm doing everything that the prince in the Disney movies did. Like, why am I not getting the princess kind of thing? And they've created this self-image to avoid the truth of what they're doing. The truth is that they're manipulative and covert and deceptive, that they're fearful and often acting from a place of anxiety, and that they're incredibly needy, and that this would be very obvious to them if they could see themselves from the outside. It's very clear that the story they have about being this great guy is not actually how they appear in the real world, and that the fact that it's used as a manipulation to get what they want is actually quite obvious to everyone. Now, the great tragedy with nice guy syndrome is what I call the backfire. Everything you do as a nice guy, the whole methodology, causes the very problems you're trying to prevent and prevents the very solutions you're trying to cause. Socially, romantically, and professionally, it backfires. For a start, people aren't stupid. They can feel that it's forced and fake. And they might go along with it because it's entertaining and pleasant to be around and comfortable, just like people don't mind having the TV on in the background while they're socializing. But they also aren't going to get intimate with you because they can sense that something's off. They don't trust you, they don't respect you. You're more like a stand-up comedian than a best friend. You can't connect emotionally, and the connections are emotional. So everything you have is superficial and light, easily put down. Somebody will leave you for someone else without feeling too bad about it because they don't really know you. All you do is ask questions and make them laugh and help them out, but you're not actually sharing any of your dark side. And if you don't have a dark side, then there's nothing really human about you. So what ends up happening is you're nice to be around, but you're nothing special. And you think nice to be around is enough, that people will love you because you're pleasant to be around. You've been conditioned to think that keeping people in the pleasant range of emotions is what they want. Some people even told you that that's what they want. Unfortunately, they were either unintentionally or intentionally lying to you. People need a range of emotions to feel connected to someone, and you're simply not giving them that range. You're boring. You're clearly performance based rather than value based. And that is, you're clearly always trying to get outcomes. You're trying to make something happen that makes you feel good rather than doing something from a sense of honor and principles and core values and integrity. And people can feel that. And even when people can't feel that, this destroys yourself inwardly. You don't really have a sense of who you are. You're constantly off track from what you believe in. You're constantly compromising yourself to make other people happy. How can you like yourself if you're doing that all the time? You don't respect yourself because you invalidate what you want, and because you allow your boundaries to be crossed and you don't lead. And because of this, other people just can't respect you. It's just really, really hard, even for decent people, to respect someone who doesn't respect themselves. You might think that your self-deprecating humor is funny, but they know that you mean it. And because of that, they really struggle to see you as anything better than you see yourself. Even the well-intentioned people. And really confident people are just going to find you exhausting and fake, and they're not going to hang out with you. So you're only going to end up being surrounded by other damaged people who basically feel sorry for you or want to abuse you. I think that's the worst thing socially, is you're going to attract the people who match you in terms of psychological health. So you're going to get into relationships and friendships with people that are going to be as damaged as you are. And you're actually going to pat yourself on the back for being the most healthy and the most solid because you seem to be the one who never struggles. You're the one who never has a problem with anything and you're so easygoing. You're going to look like the rock while everybody else is flailing when actually you are as fucked up as they are. By the way, if you're ready to break free of this and do the work, apply for a one-to-one coaching session with me where no obligation, I'll help you smash through this and at least get you started. These sessions are completely free, but they are very limited, so apply right away, dan@brojo.org. Tell me your story. Now look, the reason I do this kind of work is because this is me. My whole 20s basically were thrown down the toilet socially because of nice guy syndrome. I didn't even realize I had it until my mid to late 20s. I am the poster boy. If you read No More Mr. Nice Guy by Robert Glover, nearly every word in that book applied to me personally. But slowly and surely, I figured it out and I figured out how to break free of it. I made my peace with the fact that most of my beliefs were bullshit. That the stories I told myself about trying to make other people happy and avoiding conflict and being funny and impressing people with achievements, all of that came from a very sick and unhealthy place, and it wasn't who I really was. I had to suppress my true self to be that guy that everybody liked. And that true self was always in there. I knew who he was when I was a little kid, but I lost it along the way because there were so many people I felt like I had to manage, and there's so many threats in the social world that I felt I had to prevent. The crazy thing is, once you work your way through this, you don't become a jerk. You don't become a bad guy. You actually become more generous and you do more good than you've ever done as a nice guy. But you're also confident and assertive, and you'll realize that those are actually the missing pieces for you to have a real impact. You won't lose the niceness, you're going to lose the fakeness and let the real kindness come through. I want to finish with a little story. A client of mine, we'll just call him S to keep him anonymous. He loved women so much. There's some nice guys who are misogynistic, but vast majority of us actually worship women. It's like the opposite of misogyny, and he was one of these. But he was so afraid of hurting their feelings or being seen as creepy that he could only be very safely platonic with them. So he so often had female friends, but was in what we call the friend zone. He was romantically into them, but they didn't know about it or pretended not to know about it and treated him as a friend. And he had to sit and suffer in silence and frustration with this. By the time he came to me, he was a 30-year-old virgin who had never been in a relationship, and yet he was surrounded by women his entire life. He slowly came to realize that he handled women as if they were fragile, as if their emotions were his to manage, that if they were to ever get upset, that full range of emotions like frustrated, sad, depressed, anxious, he had failed somehow. And he realized, no, they're allowed to feel those feelings. He doesn't have to do anything about them. So I started showing him how to be a bit more honest and firm with his boundaries to trigger off those kind of emotional responses with just truthfulness. And slowly but surely, he developed the courage to do this. It's been about 7 years since I first met him. He's now married to his dream partner and he's got a second baby on the way. So he might have looked like a very hopeless, deep in the pit of nice guy syndrome case when I first met him. But with just a bit of courage and honesty, he was able to find his way through, and I'm sure you can too. So be sure to watch the next video on validation seeking. We talk about how your attachment style destroys your confidence.